of the gate, and there is mental delusion within the gate. Mental delusion has created within the gate and outside the gate, and even the gate itself, the burning house, and so on. Therefore, disclosure, display, realization, and entering may take place even on the white ox carriage. When we think of entry as adornment on this carriage, should we hope for open ground as the place to enter, or should we recognize the burning house as the place to leave? Should we reach the conclusion that the gate itself is merely a place of momentary passing? Remember, inside the carriage there is the turning of the flower of Dharma, which causes us to disclose, to display, to realize, and to enter the burning house. And on the open ground, there is turning, which causes us to disclose, to display, to realize, and enter the burning house. There are cases in which the turning activates disclosure, display, realization, and entering through the whole gate as the gate here and now. And there are cases in which the turning activates disclosure, display, realization, and entering through a single gate, which is an instance of the universal gate. There is turning which discloses, displays, realizes, and enters the universal gate in each instance of disclosure, display, realization, and entering. There are cases in which the turning activates disclosure, display, realization, and entering within the gate. And there are cases in which the turning activates disclosure, display, realization, and entering outside the gate. There are cases of disclosing, displaying, realizing, and entering open ground in the burning house. Therefore, the burning house is beyond understanding, and the open ground is beyond knowing. Who could make the turning of the wheel of the triple world into a carriage and ride? Who could make the turning of the wheel of the triple world into a carriage and ride it as the one vehicle? Who could leave and enter disclosure, display, realization, and entering as if they were a gate? If we seek the carriage from the burning house, how many times the wheel must turn? When we look upon the burning house from the open ground, how deep in the distance it is. Should we reach the conclusion that Vulture Peak existed in tranquility on open ground? Or should we study in action that the open ground is balanced and even on Vulture Peak? The place where living beings enjoy themselves has been made into eternal presence as my pure land which is immortal, and this also we must meticulously perform as original practice. Do we realize in practice that wholeheartedly wanting to meet Buddha is about ourselves? Or do we realize in practice that it is about others? There are times when the truth is realized as an individual body, and there are times when the truth is realized as the whole body. Appearance together on Vulture Peak comes from not begrudging one's own body and life. There is disclosure, display, realization, and entering in, constantly abiding here, preaching the Dharma. And there is disclosure, display, realization, and entering in as an expedient method, manifesting nirvana. In the state of being close yet still failing to see, who could not believe in understanding of non-understanding by wholeheartedness? The place which is always filled with gods and human beings is just the land of Shakyamuni Buddha and of Vairocana, the eternally peaceful and bright land itself. We who naturally belong in the four lands are just living in the Buddha's land, which is real oneness. When we look at atoms, that does not mean we fail to see the world of Dharma. When we are experiencing the world of Dharma, that does not mean we fail to experience atoms. When the Buddhas experience the world of Dharma, they do not exclude us from the experience, which is good at the beginning, middle, and end. This being so, the present is the form as it is of the state of experience, and even alarm, doubt, and fear are nothing other than reality as it is. With the Buddha's wisdom, this fear is only the difference between looking at atoms and sitting in atoms. When we are seated in the world of Dharma, it is not wide, and when we are sitting in atoms, they are not confining. Therefore, without maintaining and relying upon reality as it is, we cannot sit. But when we are maintaining and relying upon reality as it is, there is no alarm or doubt about width and confinement. This is because we have perfectly realized the body and the energy of the flower of Dharma. So should we think that our own form and nature now are originally practicing in this world of Dharma, or should we think that they are originally practicing in atoms? They are without alarm and doubt, and with fear. They are without alarm and doubt and without fear. They are simply the profound and eternal state which is original practice as the flower of Dharma turning. This seeing atoms and seeing the world of Dharma is beyond conscious action and conscious consideration. Conscious consideration and conscious action too should learn flower of Dharma consideration and should learn flower of Dharma action. When we hear of disclosure, display, realization and entering, we should understand them in terms of the Buddha's desire to cause living beings. In other words, that which as the flower of Dharma turning discloses the Buddha's wisdom, we should learn by displaying the Buddha's wisdom. That which as the flower of Dharma turning realizes the Buddha's wisdom, we should learn by entering the Buddha's wisdom. That which as the flower of Dharma turning displays the Buddha's wisdom, we should learn by realizing the Buddha's wisdom. For each such instance of the flower of Dharma turning as disclosure, display, realization and entering, we can have ways of perfect realization. In sum, this wisdom parameter of the Buddha Tathagatas is the Dharma's flower turning, which is wide, great, profound and eternal. Affirmation is just our own disclosure of the Buddha's wisdom. It is the flower of Dharma's turning which is never imparted by others. This, then, is the reality of when the mind is in the state of delusion, the flower of Dharma turns. When the mind is in the state of realization, we turn the flower of Dharma, describes turning the flower of Dharma. That is to say, when the flower of Dharma has perfectly exhausted the energy with which it turns us, the energy as it is, with which we turn ourselves, will in turn be realized. Can I say that again? That is to say, when the flower of Dharma has perfectly exhausted the energy with which it turns us, the energy as it is, with which we turn ourselves, will in turn be realized. This realization is to turn the flower of Dharma. Though the former turning is even now without cease, we reversely or naturally turning the flower of Dharma. Reversely is an odd word. Saying it again. This realization is to turn the flower of Dharma. Though the former turning is even now without cease, we reversely are naturally turning the flower of Dharma. Though we have not finished donkey business, horse business has still come in. Here there exists sole reliance on the one great purpose as real appearance at this place. The multitudes of the thousandfold world that spring out of the earth have long been great honoured saints of the flower of Dharma, but they spring out of the earth being turned by themselves, and they spring out of the earth being turned by circumstances. In turning the flower of Dharma, we should not only realize springing out of the earth. In turning the flower of Dharma, we should also realize springing out of space. We should know with the Buddha's wisdom not only earth and space, but also springing out of the... We should know with the Buddha's wisdom not only earth and space, but also springing out of the flower of Dharma itself. In general, in the time of the flower of Dharma, inevitably, the father is young and the son old. It is neither that the son is not the son, nor that the Father is not the Father. We should just learn that the Son is old and the Father young. Do not imitate the disbelief of the world and be surprised. Even the disbelief of the world is the time of the flower of Dharma. This being so, in turning the flower of Dharma, we should realize the one time in which the Buddha is living. Turned by disclosure, display, realization and entering, we spring out of the earth, and turned by the Buddha's wisdom, we spring out of the earth. At the time of this turning, the flower of Dharma, mental realization exists as the flower of Dharma, and the flower of Dharma exists as mental realization. For another example, the meaning of the downward direction is just the inside of space. This downward and this space are just the turning of the flower of Dharma and are just the lifetime of the Buddha. We should realize, in turning the flower of Dharma, that the Buddha's lifetime, the flower of Dharma, the world of Dharma, and the whole-hearted state that are realized as downward and realized also as space. Thus, downward space describes just the realization of turning the flower of Dharma. I'm going to stop there because I can hear people in the house getting ready to go out, and it's time for me to go with them. Thank you for listening.